Welcome to the PIO podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local governments. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. I am Robert Tornabene, your host of the show, a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. Each episode we will discuss different aspects of the public information officer field. If you would like to contact the show, please email thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Please let me know you like the podcast by giving it a rating on whatever platform you listen to. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified on the latest episode. Last week, we interviewed Rebecca Mina from the District of Columbia Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency. Rebecca had some great things to say. Thank you to Rebecca for coming on the podcast. This week, we are interviewing Ashley McDonald, Public Information Officer for Rutherford County, Tennessee. Ashley's bio is in the notes of the podcast. Thanks for coming on the show, Ashley. Let's talk about how you became a public information officer, Ashley.
So my background is in public relations. I went to Middle Tennessee State University, and that's the track that I went on, mostly because it had it was the path of least math, and I'm terrible at math. And so I really enjoyed public relations, but I couldn't really find a good job coming out of college, in that realm. And so I worked as a teller at a bank, then I worked at a newspaper selling advertising, then I worked at the fire department. I started a job at the fire department, and I started as an administrative assistant, but I started doing a monthly newsletter and would do, some things here and there, and kind of the media relations and host some of the events and different things like that. And finally approached the chief one day and said that I would be interested, in doing a little bit more as far as that goes. And they ended up putting an assistant chief in that role. And he did not fare very well. He was in that role for about a year. And then they decided, well, we might want to give that to Ashley. We might want to give her the opportunity to do that. So I finally got the opportunity to write the press releases as, the actual PIO and not the person behind the scenes writing them for someone else.
Okay. So how long of that, what was the time frame? You said a year from the time the deputy chief was in the position. And then from that point forward, how long were you in that position?
So I worked for, I was a PIO for Murfreesboro Fire Rescue, for 7 years.
Nice. Your role now with your current agency, so it's changed now. So you went from working on the fire side, now you're for the entire county government, correct?
Correct.
So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So Rutherford County never had a public information officer. And I was sort of at a time in my life where I knew I needed a change. Things were kind of shifting at the fire department, and I had just lost my father. And so I found out that this position was available actually as I was sitting in an FBI LEDA NPR course. So I applied for it and interviewed for it. And I just thought it was a unique opportunity because I would be able to basically build the position and mold and shape it into what would be good for me, but would also benefit the county most. And so I was very fortunate to be able to receive that position. The other aspect of it is I'm a programs coordinator. So we have our recycling education piece that we have in the school. So that's something else that I'm doing now.
Came into this role with the county, you were a single person operation, correct?
I was. For an entire county, we employ over 2,000 people, and our county is at about 340,000 population. I do have colleagues within the jurisdictions that are within our county that run the separate or PIOs for the separate jurisdictions. So that does take a little bit off of me. And then our public safety, not for the county, but those jurisdictions have their own PIOs. So that helps a little bit too.
So how many in-house for yourself staff-wise do you have?
So now it's myself, and then I have one person who reports to me. She was the webmaster, so she was with Office of Information Technology, and she just this year came over to my department. So I used to be a department head of one, and I would tell people, if you come by my office and I'm, talking to myself, don't worry, I'm either doing an employee evaluation or I'm giving myself some constructive criticism.
That's awesome. You are now the president of the National Information Officers Association, and this is like your second year, correct?
Yeah, this is unprecedented, which what we really love that word in 2020. But due to the pandemic, I am actually the first 2 consecutive term president because we did not meet this year for our conference in person, and so the board voted to forego elections this year. So for the first time, a president has served 2 consecutive years, and that's me. So that it was an honor for that to happen, but it also put kind of a bit of weight on my shoulders, thinking, man, I have 2 years in a row that I'm going to be doing this role. I really need to make an impression on this organization and our field.
You know what? I think you're doing it, and we'll get into why you're doing that, why I believe you're doing that now. How overall has the experience been? So you've been in the NIOA for a number of years because there are requirements before you can become a president. Tell me about your experiences with that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that maybe are not members of NIOA that need to hear about it and learn a little bit more about it.
It was literally my first educational touch point for public information officer, because I became public information officer in July and went to the conference in August. And so that was, I remember Ed Bice taught PIO 101 for that first 8-hour day during the conference. And that was literally the first time, that I had some background information on the position. Public relations is, a little bit different than PIO, as we know, because it's private versus public. So I did learn a lot from that particular session. And then just the networking, like immediately I made lifelong friends. And I told myself within a couple of years of being in, I told myself I want to run for office one day, because I just felt so passionately about this organization that helped develop my skills. And it was the first touch point, and it's where I go back to every time. If I need advice, I go to those people that I met in the organization.
Well, you answered my second part to that question, so that's awesome. I think the networking for me was immediately apparent how valuable it was. Just being able to reach out to someone anywhere in the country at any given time and say, hey, I need help with this, or I need some guidance. And everybody has dropped everything they were doing just to turn around and provide that advice when it was necessary.
And really, it's an $80 a year membership, and you really can't. Other organizations that would even be in the same type of realm, I say we're a standout, but you can't even initiate a membership for that amount. And you're getting access to our newsletters, you're getting access to all of our membership directory. So all of those people are right there at your fingertips, just for the $80, the knowledge, the experience, the expertise, just all of it right there for $80 a year. What more can you ask for? No,
absolutely not. I agree. There definitely is worth it. Initiatives that NIOA is working on. So I know you've done a couple things. Could you elaborate on some of those initiatives?
Sure. So like I said, I felt like I had a little bit more weight on my shoulders to really do something to make a difference for the organization and for the field as a whole. And so I've sort of volunteered myself to head a focus group to seek an organization that would host a public information officer professional designation or credentialing process. And so through that focus group, we actually did some research on some different organizations and hashed it out. And there were several public safety participants on the focus group. And we kind of narrowed it down to the Center for Public Safety Excellence early on. They gave us a bit of homework to do. We completed that homework. We sent in a proposal to them October the 9th. and they confirmed it at first glance. They think it looks great. There's a process that they're going to have to go through, and they've got several other things that they're doing right now. But I'm telling people that I'm cautiously confident that we're going to be able to move forward with the Center for Public Safety Excellence as our host organization for that credentialing process and professional designation.
Wow, that's amazing. That is definitely something that will add a little bit more eliteness to the public information officer's position and add some credibility to it as well, because you do see leaders from different organizations, they don't really think that the PIO does a whole lot, and that definitely will show that there's some specialization involved in it, and
Yes.
that professional certification will be awesome.
There's a common misconception that public information officers are just spokespersons. And so we really, wanted to highlight that that's just, this much of the job. I mean, let's be honest, we're strategic communicators more than anything. And 9 times out of 10, we're not even the ones on the camera. We're prepping somebody else to be on camera. So we just really wanted to highlight the different areas of value that the PIO brings to the table. And we really believe that if we can get this professional designation, that it will allow, it will give us more intrinsic value. We'll feel better about ourselves, right? Because we've accomplished something special, but also it'll give us something to take to leadership and say, look, I had to go through all this to get this designation. This is how important I am, but this is a good thing. This is adding value to our organization by us having this position here.
That's awesome. Ashley, keep it up. That's amazing. I'm sure the members and those that are not members of NAOA, when they hear about this, they're going to be jumping on board and very excited about the opportunity to have that designation. So kudos to you guys in the board and the focus group. That's awesome. Ashley, what do you see as the greatest challenge right now for public information officers today?
There's so many. It's hard to choose just one. I really feel like misinformation is probably one of the things that we're having to deal with the most right now. That's happened with the pandemic, that we're seeing that happen again with the vaccines coming out. It's just been such a struggle this year. There's so many people out there, so many citizen journalists and bloggers and different things. And, everybody's an expert in whatever subject matter they're talking about. And it's really hard to control that message to the public because they're getting inundated with messages from every direction.
Okay, so yeah, misinformation. I can definitely see that, especially with the vaccinations and stuff, and being able to fight that battle right now with the population at less than 60% right now for trust in the vaccination. Which, if you want to get back to normal, that's where we're going to have to go. All right, so you recently wrote a rebuttal article to the Society of Professional Journalism to an article that they published about how PIOs are a hindrance to the news media. So can you explain a bit about that, and then what your thoughts are on why they think we're a hindrance when in reality we all know we're not?
Yes, I can. First of all, I can't take responsibility for actually drafting the letter. One of our other board members did that, but it was on behalf of NIOA, and we certainly supported them in that mission. I really feel like, we talk about this in basic PIO, we talk about this from the get-go, but I really think it highlights the importance of developing a relationship with your local media. I think I have a fairly good relationship with my media here so that they don't see me as a hindrance. We invite them to our local PIO meetings and different things like that, so they can ask us questions about what, hoops we have to jump through on our end to get them the information. And we just have very candid conversations with each other, then they tell us on their end, this is why I have this deadline. My boss is breathing down my neck too. I think if you can have a mutually beneficial relationship with one another and also respect one another, I think that's where just have to go back to the basics of developing those relationships, and then we won't be seen so much as a hindrance. They'll be able to see us as someone that can help them, and then likewise we can see them as our conduit to the public, just like we, again, learning basic PIO. It's truly that simple. We just have to give it more forethought. We can't just, and I do recognize that that's tougher too, because we do have a high turnover sometimes in media, so it's hard to develop those relationships. But just whatever we can do to try to do that on the front end, I really think can help mitigate some of those issues.
Okay, so kind of dig into this a little deeper. Why does the media feel threatened by how we're trying to generate our message, or in a sense, we spin our image, our agency's image in a certain way? Why is that a threat to the general media?
I can't speak for how each media outlet or each journalist feels personally. To me, I especially think we've seen this more so this year. We're kind of making their job a little easier by, doing our storytelling and being available via Zoom and other means, or keeping them from having to travel so much just to get, one little sound bite. I really think that we, again, if we just have those relationships, I don't think they should feel threatened at all. I think they should feel like we are legitimately helping them and cutting back on some of their work. We both want to reach the public. We both want to reach them with, the facts and the correct side of the story. Now, I do also recognize that there are probably media outlets that are biased. So I can't speak for, blanket statement for the media, but I think overall, maybe somebody who feels threatened is just not looking at it the right way. I mean, I feel like we're really helping them and lowering their workload. We're just giving them, what they want with minimal involvement from their part.
Okay, good. I'm just going to go one step deeper in some of the news outlets, and these may not necessarily revolve around your experiences, but they look at us when we try and they want unfettered access to staff, and they don't want the PIO in when you're talking to your executive or things of those natures. Is that more of just that relationship, or is it they want to keep the PIO out because they know the PIO is going to probably, okay, we're done now, and move on and segue off into something else, and to protect the executive? Because let's face it, sometimes the executives, they tend to wander off and give more information than they should, and our job obviously is to protect them.
Okay, yes, I do recognize that there are probably journalists that feel that way. We even have some locally that kind of joke about it and say, I know you're, when they're doing an interview with the staff, I know your PIO is going to try to get you to say this, but what I really need you to say is how this situation. And I recognize that that's going on as well. I just think, if we can build enough credibility with our media, and then that's not going to happen in all cases. But then they can trust us to get them what they need. Of course, we're always going to have somebody that has a certain angle, or they are trying to get somebody to talk about something else when they, mislead us. They say their angle is one thing, but it's really this. But I think that's probably not the norm. Like, I feel in my personal situation anyway, it's never happened to me. So I can't speak to, somebody saying, I mean, they do try to call my boss all the time, but my boss just says, I'm not, we have a PIO, you can call the PIO. So, and I've never been a journalist. So that may be a good question for somebody who's a recovering journalist and now in the PIO realm,
Right.
How does it feel being on both sides? And we have asked recovering journalists that question before. I worked with one at the city, and, initially he wanted to tell the full story just like, paint the picture just like when he was a journalist. And then he would take it to his chief, and his chief would say, with a red pen, mark everything off. And he'd say, okay, you can say these 2 lines. So, he had a learning curve.
Right.
So, and he said, I never knew it was this way, that there were so many barriers, but, and maybe, again, invite them to your PIO meetings. Say, look, we have just as much barriers as you do. We have a chain of command. We have to vet this information, or we have to do this. And just, I think giving them a little bit more information about your operation and making them feel like they're sort of a part of it, and they can help you in some way, and you can help them in some way. It may not get you everybody. It may not, change the minds of all your journalists. But, if you could even get a few, that's better than nothing. I
agree. So you left just a little over a year. You left your position with Fire Rescue, and took over as a county government's PIO. How has your role changed from that role?
Okay, so I'm going to give you when people ask me, just in casual conversation, I'm going to give you that answer, and then I'm going to tell you like how it really is. So I tell them that I left the land of puppies and sunshine and kittens and rainbows, which is fire, to come into hellfire and brimstone, which is politics. I had experience with politics on a very minimal level at the city, and I was thrust into it here at the county level. We, in our jurisdiction, in our county, we have 21 county commissioners. We have a mayor, we have a deputy to the mayor. So it is, and we have a lot of elected officials. And so that part of it was a learning curve for me, for sure, and still is. I'm still on that curve somewhere. I was fortunate. Well, I won't say I was fortunate, but I kind of knew I was going to miss that fire aspect, that public safety aspect. And shortly after I came, the PIO for the fire rescue actually took another job. And so I do still get to cover fire and rescue, and I do get to help our EMS and our EMA. So I still get to be in that public safety realm. And I think that kind of makes everything else that I'm dealing with on a daily basis, I think that makes it a little bit more palatable, knowing I can still have my little dosage every now and then of the public safety aspect.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to jump ahead here because you made a comment, but your media technician probably could address this a little bit better. But what's your favorite social media platform that you like to use personally?
I really like to use Facebook, although I don't really care for the comments. I have had to, take a sabbatical or two during 2020. I really like it because you can get more information out there at a time. I feel like we have more followers there. We have quite a bit with Twitter too, but it's just not, we just can't share as much, I feel like, and we don't have as much of a followership there. We do have an Instagram account. We're not very vigilant about posting on it. And we don't, we actually thought about getting rid of it because we didn't really have the bandwidth. For Facebook, we have like 14 different accounts that we manage. And for Twitter, we have 2. So Instagram's kind of one of those that kind of fell by the wayside. Right. But I recently taught a basic PIO class, and the county schools PIO was in there. And he kind of brought up a good point to me, because here we are thinking about getting rid of this platform. And they were kind of thinking the same thing. They said, we post maybe once every 6 months, but we have 2,000 followers. So we're reevaluating what we can do to start posting regular content, like maybe weekly, come up with something just so we can keep, those 2,000, engage those 2,000 followers. And I thought, well, I'm looking at it the wrong way. We shouldn't be thinking about closing down this account. We should be thinking, okay, we have this amount of followers. What can we do to make sure that we are engaging with them on this platform?
Right.
But Facebook is definitely my favorite. I'm just more comfortable with it. I really didn't get into Twitter until I ran for VP for NIOA. And I don't Instagram at all. I don't have a personal Instagram account. So I'm not very Instagram literate.
Well, now the 2 platforms between Facebook and Instagram, there's so much similarity between the 2 now. because they're both owned by Facebook, that it's interesting how now, even with Twitter, with now these fleets, which are just stories, it's amazing how they're all so similar now. Okay, so what advice do you have for someone who wants to become a public information officer coming out of college? Because I've seen that this is becoming more frequently a thing instead of, coming into it later in life.
Yes, get as much education as you can, and don't necessarily do it in conventional ways. Pull all your resources together. Kind of have conversations with your local public information officers, public safety, county government level, city government, whomever you can involve yourself with. It's all about that networking. I'd like to say that you could come right out of school and have all that education and go right into something. But really you have to build that trust and credibility with an agency before they trust you to take on their public information role. So I feel like, the more information that they have, the more education as far as real world experience education, like we give at NIOA, like with our sessions at NIOA, we're not the only one out there, but I feel like we've got a pretty good thing going on. So I should say that. I shouldn't say come to us and nobody else, but I am pretty biased when it comes to that. But I really think, if they can just pull all the resources locally that they can, and even maybe get in some of the, public Facebook groups and just kind of, say, hey, I'm looking to get into this. I had somebody approach me on LinkedIn and say that they wanted to get in the emergency management side of public information. Just engage people who've been doing it for years, because, they're not always going to be there, and they probably do want to cultivate a really good culture to take their place. So just ask us, I won't call myself a pro, but just ask us that have been in it for a while, and maybe we can mentor them and help them maybe find something later on down the road.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. So you participated in a bunch of training with FBI LEDA, both for the media and public relations course and then the master PIO course. What other courses would you like to see that either NIOA credentialing? I'm sure there's got to be some training that's got to be involved with that. What other things would you like to see?
So I definitely think FBI LEDA, their NPR and their Master PIO classes are very beneficial. Even if you're not law enforcement, there's tidbits of information, nuggets of information for every discipline, and I thoroughly enjoyed it and learned a lot. GD Powell is just an amazing expert when it comes to this field, and she was a former NIOA president, so just saying. I also got the pleasure of going through to the master's course level through FEMA's Public Information Officer program. I will say, it's unique in that it's 3 weeks non-consecutive on campus at EMI. It is free, other than you paying for your meals. You do have to write a research paper. The two biggest things that I probably got out of that course, because it is pretty academic, it's not, you're not getting a lot of the practical knowledge, but you should have already gotten that in basic and advanced. But the networking, again, I'm like, we're in a WhatsApp group, or WhatsApp chat group. Oh, that's so hard to say. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. We talk every day. I'll pop up in there. I've got this going on, and just we vent to each other. Just we ask, do you have this joint information center plan that I can borrow? We're trying to develop this. Just a wealth of knowledge from all across the nation. Even one of our classmates was from Alaska, so we get some interesting things from her. But really, things that you just never even thought of considering, that they're going through, that maybe you might find applicable to your situation one day. So I got that out of it. And doing the research paper, there really is not a lot of research on public information.
Oh my God, no, there's not. I did something, for a capstone for college. That was something I did, and there's not much out there. It was really like pulling teeth to find stuff.
No, and I worried about it at first. I thought, oh gosh, I was dreading it. It had to be at least 15 pages. And I started doing my research, and there really wasn't a lot on my subject matter and all this stuff. But when I started really delving into it, I ended up sending it. I think mine was the longest one, not including the appendices. It was 45 pages long.
Oh,
so,
wow.
And it will be in the National Emergency Training Center library one day when they start opening that back up. But mine was on, the evolving role of the PIO as a family liaison during disasters and things like that, like being that media buffer for families who have just undergone a large tragedy,
Right.
And there was literally nothing.
Well, I think there's going to be a big change in the way that pretty much every agency and organization look at providing information after this pandemic. Once this is all done and there's been a cold wash done and everybody's done their debriefs and said, okay, where do we need to build back up? Because inevitably something like this is going to happen again. And we all see how poorly prepared so many agencies were, from the national all the way down to the local, and their struggles to keep that message coming out and to keep the public informed. Yeah, that's going to definitely probably broaden perspectives for opportunities for NAOA and any other organization that's out there.
Absolutely.
What is one thing that if you could say to our listeners today, that's a good takeaway?
I would just say, get to know as many PIOs as you can, because if there's something that you've not yet gone through in your role, they've probably gone through it. And it's just a matter of time before you're going to go through it. And you need not only the support for what you're going through, but you also need emotional support from people who understand the nature of this position, the nature of this role. And I just think it's very important as it is to develop relationships with the media, it's just as important to develop those relationships with your other public information officers.
Outstanding. Thank you. So your last book that you read?
My last book that I read, let me think on that. I think the last book that I read was a devotional book, actually, and it was called Embraced.
Okay.
Really, really good uplifting book.
Well, we can always use a little bit of uplifting in this day and age. Amen. Right now.
I may reread it in 2021.
Yeah, this year is just amazing. Favorite sport and team?
I'm not really a sports person. I guess I would say, if I do want to watch a sport ever, maybe football. Our Tennessee Titans, they did a little bit better this year than they've, done in the last several years. But I'm just not a huge sports person. I know people are probably going to ping me for that. But.
Don't worry about it. And we are rolling into the holidays. We're a week away from Christmas. So what's your must-have comfort food for the holidays?
I'm just a regular old pumpkin pie gal, and it's got to have a scoop of Cool Whip on it. It can't be Ready Whip. It can't be anything else. It's got to just be Cool Whip. And I like almost a burnt crust. Not quite, but almost. You like a little bit of crackle to it, huh? Yes, I do. I like that, texture change from the Cool Whip to the pie to the the crust. I'm a crust girl. I really like the crust. Well, Ashley, that is everything that we got today. Thank you very much. Anything else you want to offer? Just join NIOA, and I promise you won't regret it. I guarantee they will not regret it. Guarantee it. Ashley, have a good Christmas with your family. Be safe and take care. Appreciate it so much. Thanks, Robert. That was Ashley McDonald. Be sure to look her up on her social media or through the NIOA website. Thanks, Ashley, for coming on the show. Next week, we'll be interviewing Deputy Chief and PIO Mike Pruitt from the Bargersville Fire Department. That is it for this week's show. We appreciate you listening. Share this podcast to help us grow. And until next time, be safe.